Do you really think you can steal our husband from us? Let's see if your good looks can save you from this monster.
Please take the chief and let me go. You cannot escape your fate. Father, I beg you, do not make me marry this man. I do not love him.
Adesewa cried and begged her parents, but nobody gave her a listening ear. Nobody knew she had already made a risky promise to a water goddess. Now, her family had made a huge mistake that would ruin their lives forever. Let's rewind to where everything started. Before we jump in, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps support my channel. Also, drop a comment to tell me where in the world you're watching from today, my lovely family. Now grab a seat, get yourself a cold glass of zobo and some crunchy chin-chin, and enjoy the story. Once upon a time, in a distant village named Oden, the sun shone gently and the wind made the trees sway. It was a peaceful village, but inside one tiny hut, there was no joy or music. There was only the sound of a young girl crying her eyes out. The girl's name was Adesewa. Adesewa was stunning, as beautiful as the morning star. Her skin was golden and smooth, and she had a heart as soft as warm, boiled yam. However, Adesewa's eyes were constantly swollen and red. Why? Because the loving mother who used to rub sweet-smelling Yuri on her skin was gone. Her mother had passed away, leaving poor Adesewa all by herself. Adesewa's father, Adebayo, hated sleeping in an empty house, so he decided to bring home a new wife. Her name was Adefunk. Adefunk was hardly a human being. She didn't have a real heart in her chest, she had a cold, hard stone instead. She looked at Adesewa like an ugly weed growing in her garden, hating her for absolutely no reason at all. Adesewa, you lazy goat. You useless child. Adefunk would scream, followed instantly by the loud smack of her hand across Adesewa's cheek. One night, while the moon hid behind dark clouds and crickets chirped outside, Adefunk kicked Adesewa's door wide open. Get up. The water pot is empty. Adesewa rubbed her tired eyes. But Mama, I finished all my work. Look, the pots are super clean. Adefunk gave an evil laugh. The pots may be clean, but my throat is thirsty. Go down to the river right now. Adesewa looked out her small window. It was pitch black at midnight, dark like charcoal. Mama, please. Adesewa begged, dropping straight to her knees. The bushes are full of sharp thorns, and dangerous night spirits are walking around. You know it's taboo to fetch water in the middle of the night. Please, let me go early in the morning. Adefunk slapped her face so hard that Adesewa's head slammed against the hard clay wall. If you aren't back here in 1 hour, don't even bother coming home. I will lie to your father that you ran off with a boy, and he will beat you up himself. Adesewa stared toward her father's room and cried out, Baba, please help me. But Adebayo was totally controlled by his evil new wife. He just pulled his blanket over his ears and faked snoring, abandoning his own blood to face the scary night alone. Adesewa lifted her heavy clay pot, her legs trembling like a leaf in a gust of wind. Her heart hammered against her chest. The midnight forest was scary. The dark trees looked like giant men with long black arms reaching out to grab her hair. Every time a dry leaf crunched beneath her feet, Adesewa jumped with fear. Oh, Mama, look at what your daughter is going through on this dark road, she whispered. Finally, she heard the soothing sound of the river. The water looked like shiny black oil under the moonlight. Adesewa knelt down on the riverbank. However, the second she lowered her pot into the water, the river suddenly stopped flowing. All the bubbles vanished. The surface became completely still, clear like a glass mirror. Then, glub, 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 a massive bubble floated up from the middle. A woman rose right out of the water, but she wasn't a normal human being like you and me. Her hair reached down to her waist, shining as bright as pure gold. Her skin glowed brightly like the morning sun. From the waist down, she had no legs at all. Instead, she had a long, shiny golden tail that moved smoothly like a kingfish. Water goddess. Adesewa shrieked in terror. Crash. Her clay pot slipped, falling to the ground and smashing into 100 tiny pieces. The mermaid swam closer, her voice sounding soft and clear like a ringing bell. Little bird, why are you sitting by my river crying at this hour? This is when the spirits come out to bathe. My stepmother. Adesewa sobbed, her tears falling straight into the river. She sent me here. If I go back empty-handed, she will kill me. My real mother is gone, and I have nobody left to fight for me. The mermaid felt deeply sorry for her. She reached down into the deep water and pulled out a beautiful necklace of beads. These weren't regular beads, they were Alikomi, the legendary beads of joy. They sparkled like bright gold and felt cozy and warm, just like a mother's tight hug. Take these, the mermaid said gently. Wear them hidden under your clothes. Whenever the world treats you too harshly, touch these beads and jump into the water, you will turn into one of us. In my underwater palace, you'll never go hungry, you'll never cry, and no evil stepmother can ever hurt you. Suddenly, the mermaid's face turned dead serious. However, listen carefully, everything comes with a price. If you wear these beads, you belong to the water. You must never marry any man. If a man ever touches you as his wife, the magic will transform into a bitter curse. Do you agree? Adesewa immediately remembered the hard slap to her face and sleeping on the freezing floor. I agree, she cried out. I don't want a husband, I only want to be safe. The mermaid gently wrapped the beads around Adesewa's waist. Flash. Out of nowhere, a brand new clay pot appeared right on the sand, filled to the top with pure, sweet water. And before Adesewa could even blink, the mermaid was gone, poof, vanished. Adesewa carried the heavy pot on her head and walked back home. When Adefunk saw her return, her eyes nearly popped right out of her head like a snail's. Adesewa didn't say a single word, she simply went back to her sleeping corner and fell asleep with a small smile on her face. From that night on, Adesewa completely avoided boys. If any boy tried to come near her, she would sprint away as fast as her legs could carry her. Whenever life became too painful, Adesewa would rush to the riverbank. She would whisper the magic words, and boom! She'd transform into a mermaid, swimming around and feasting on delicious food in the spirit realm. However, big trouble was right around the corner. And this trouble wore a huge, fancy agbada and already had plenty of wives. One afternoon, Adesewa was walking home from the stream, softly humming a water tune to herself. Right at that moment, Chief Adelik spotted her. Now, Chief Adelik was a wealthy man who owned tons of cows and sacks of money. He already had 7 wives and 18 daughters, but he was never satisfied. He desperately wanted a son. When he noticed Adesewa's smooth skin and gentle manners, his heart started pounding like crazy, boom, boom, boom. I must have that girl, he boasted to himself. She is the perfect wife to give me a male child. He didn't bother asking Adesewa what she wanted. Instead, he marched straight to her house. He showed Adebayo and Adefunk heavy sacks of shiny coins and large, fat cows with huge horns. Adefunk's eyes instantly popped with greed. Take her. Take her, she cheered. She's just a lazy girl anyway, we don't need her here. Adesewa collapsed onto the floor, grabbing her father's feet and sobbing. Baba, please. The chief is an old man, he could be my grandfather. Besides, I have a secret. I can't marry him. But Adebayo was busy counting the coins. 1, 2, 3. He didn't even bother looking at his daughter's face. Shut up. Your job is to bring money into this family. You will marry the chief on the next market day, and that's final. Adesewa cried until her throat was completely dry. She touched the Alikomi beads hidden under her clothes and wanted to sprint to the river, but Adefunk was too sharp. Adefunk tied Adesewa's hands tight with rough, thick ropes. You think you're a bird that can just fly away? Adefunk mocked with a laugh. No way. You're like a goat being sold at the market, and goats don't get to choose who buys them. The wedding was rushed through instantly. Snap! Before she even knew what was happening, Adesewa was inside the chief's grand house. However, it was far from a happy home. The 7 wives were already waiting, standing with their arms crossed. Their faces were as sour as spoiled lime. "Look at her," whispered Abike, the first wife. "She thinks she's a queen just because her skin is like silk." Another wife hissed, "She thinks she's going to be his favorite. We'll teach her that old soup tastes way better than fresh soup." That night, the chief walked into Adesewa's room smelling of strong tobacco and heavy wine. He reached out his wrinkled hand to touch her, but Adesewa jumped back like a startled deer, her heart racing fast. She remembered the mermaid's stern warning: if a man touches you, the magic turns into a bitter curse. "Please, my lord," she begged. "I am sick. My period just started. If you touch me right now, the gods will be furious. You are a powerful man, you don't want a bleeding woman's curse to drain your strength." The chief was a man who was deeply terrified of bad luck and curses, so he quickly backed away. "Your period? On your wedding night?" "Yes, my lord. Please give me 7 days. If you touch me before then, you might even turn into a woman yourself." The chief's eyes went wide with fear. 7 days. No more. "After 7 days, I will take you as my wife and you will give me a son." He slammed the door shut and locked it. Bam! Adesewa sank to the floor. She only had 7 days left, 7 days before the magic broke and her entire life was ruined. Meanwhile, the 7 wives were eavesdropping at the door, secretly plotting a wicked scheme. The next day, the chief's compound was quiet like a graveyard, but the atmosphere felt super heavy, like a huge storm was brewing. The 7 wives refused to speak to Adesewa. They only gave her dirty, hateful glares. Whenever the chief returned from his meetings, he brought heaps of gifts for Adesewa and even rubbed her feet right in front of the other wives. Their jealousy grew so strong it felt like it was about to explode from their chests. Then one day, a messenger arrived with an urgent notice for the chief, telling him he was needed at a meeting in the neighboring village. The chief quickly packed his things. "I will be back in 2 days," he told Adesewa. "I expect you to be ready to give me a son when I get back." Then he left. With the chief gone, the palace was dead silent that night. Suddenly, strange footsteps echoed down the hall. Adesewa sat up in her dark room, her voice shaking like a terrified bird. "Who is there?" Nobody replied, but she could hear the sound of multiple people breathing. Suddenly, bam, 5 wives burst into the room. Before Adesewa could scream, one of them swung a heavy wooden pestle, the kind used for pounding yam, right through the air. Thwack! The heavy wood smashed into Adesewa's head. Stars danced before her eyes and everything went blurry. She felt something warm like hot tea running down her face. It was her own blood. "Is she dead?" one wife whispered. "Not yet, but she will be soon," another answered. Adesewa tried to reach for her golden beads, but her arms felt as heavy as giant boulders. The wives wrapped her up in a dirty, smelly mat and carried her out into the dark night. When Adesewa finally opened her eyes, the world was hazy and gray. She wasn't in a bed, she was tied to a massive, ancient tree with rough ropes digging into her skin like sharp teeth. She was stranded in the shadowed thicket, a terrifying place where no one dared to go. Rumor had it that a hideous beast lived there, with teeth like sharp knives and a voice like thunder. The 7 wives stood right in front of her, laughing wickedly. "Goodbye, little queen," mocked Abike, giving Adesewa's hair one last cruel yank. "Let's see if your good looks will save you from the beast. By morning, only your bare bones will be left for the ants. Please." Adesewa choked out through her tears. "I don't even want the chief. You can have him. Just let me go." But the wives simply turned around and ran off, abandoning Adesewa all alone in the middle of nowhere. The sun set completely, and the forest turned as dark as the bottom of a burnt pot. Then, Adesewa heard it. Something massive was walking nearby. The ground shook beneath her feet. A deep, terrifying growl made the forest leaves tremble. Adesewa squeezed her eyes shut tightly. "Mama," she whispered, "I am coming to join you." Just then, she felt a scorching hot breath right against the back of her neck. It smelled like wild animal fur and damp earth. She waited for the sharp teeth to sink in. She waited for the end. But instead of biting her, the large, hairy shadow moved closer very slowly. He looked down at Adesewa with big, sad eyes. He used his sharp, long claws, not to hurt her, but to slice through the ropes holding her. Rip, rip. As soon as the ropes fell away, the beast stepped back. He pointed a giant, furry hand down the forest path. "Run," he said. His voice was deep like a booming drum, but it sounded deeply sad. Adesewa was completely shocked. She wanted to thank him, but she was just too terrified. She turned around and sprinted as fast as her legs could take her. "I have to get away," she thought. Suddenly, a deadly yellow snake hidden in the dry leaves bit her ankle. Adesewa felt a sharp, painful sting, and her legs instantly felt as heavy as lead. She collapsed onto the dirt as her world began to fade into darkness again. As her eyes closed, she caught a glimpse of the giant hairy shadow standing over her. "Don't leave me," she whispered. Then, everything went quiet. When Adesewa finally opened her eyes, she wasn't on the freezing ground. She was resting on a soft mat made of dry sticks. The room felt warm, and she could hear a small fire crackling in the corner. She looked down at her leg. The snake bite was wrapped in green leaves and a herbal paste that smelled like forest medicine. All the pain was completely gone. Then she saw him. The beast was sitting right beside the fire, gently stirring a pot of soup. He was huge and hairy, with teeth sharp enough to crush bones, but he moved so softly, like he was trying not to wake up a sleeping baby. "You're awake," the beast said. His voice was as deep as a mountain, but it wasn't scary at all. "Drink this. It will wash the snake's venom out of your body." For many days, the beast looked after Adesewa. He brought her sweet berries that tasted like honey and fresh, cool water straight from the rocks. They slowly began to talk. Adesewa shared the story of her evil stepmother and the jealous wives who tried to murder her. The beast looked at her with gentle eyes that weren't frightening at all, they just looked sad, like a lost puppy longing for home. One day, once Adesewa was feeling strong again, she went down to the stream to wash up. She noticed an old woman struggling under a huge pile of firewood, her back bent like a dry stick. "Wait, Grandma. Let me carry that for you," Adesewa called out. She took the heavy wood and walked alongside the old woman for a bit. Suddenly, the old woman asked her to drop the firewood. Adesewa looked around. There were no houses anywhere in sight. The old woman turned around and began to glow brightly like a firefly. "You have a heart of gold, daughter of the river," the woman whispered softly. She reached into her clothes and pulled out a tiny clay jar decorated with white cowrie shells. "This is the jar of one breath," the old woman explained. "Inside is a single wish, just one. You can wish for riches, you can wish death upon your enemies, or you can wish for life itself. But once you use it, the jar will break forever. Choose wisely, Adesewa." And then, poof, the old woman turned into a cloud of white smoke and vanished into thin air. That night, Adesewa sat beside the beast, her mind racing over what the old woman had said. "You look lost. Are you okay?" the beast asked gently. "I'm fine," Adesewa replied, keeping her voice calm. "I was just wondering, how does a monster like you talk just like a human?" The beast let out a deep sigh. "Adesewa," he said softly, "I wasn't always a monster. I used to be a prince. My name is Adesewa. My greedy uncle wanted the crown for himself, so he paid a wicked native doctor to turn me into this creature. He threw me out here so the world would completely forget about me." "Are you serious? Your own uncle did that to you?" Adesewa gasped, completely shocked. She looked at him again. This time, she didn't see the thick fur or the sharp claws anymore. She saw a lonely man, just like her. Deep in her heart, she was falling in love with him. But suddenly, the mermaid's icy warning echoed in her mind. You must never belong to a man. Meanwhile, back in the village of Oten, the air felt tense and sour. Chief Adelik had returned from his trip and was calling out for his new bride. Adesewa. Come and welcome your husband, he shouted. Instead, only the 7 wives walked out, wearing fake sad expressions like funeral masks. A bike began to squeeze out fake tears. Oh, my husband. Something terrible has happened. Adesewa went to the river to wash her clothes, and the water spirit dragged her away. All we found was her broken pot. She's gone. On the inside, the wives were secretly celebrating. They assumed Adesewa had already been eaten by ants in the shadowed thicket. What the 7 wives didn't realize was that on the exact night they committed that evil act, they woke up Osair, the ancient god of animals. The very next morning, the wives woke up to a horrifying shock. A bike looked into her mirror and shrieked. Her ears had grown long, floppy, and hairy like a donkey's. Another wife started sprouting feathers all over her arms, and when she tried to speak, she could only make goat sounds, bleat, bleat. The villagers panicked and ran away, screaming, the wives are turning into animals. Chief Adelik grew terrified. He rushed over to Babalawo Opayami to demand answers. Your wives have committed a terrible crime, the wise Babalawo declared. They must confess everything immediately, or they will surely die. Deep in the heart of the forest, Adesewa held the jar of one breath tight in her hands. The glowing white light inside sparkled like a captured star. She looked at the beast and whispered, I have a secret. This jar can grant me anything. I was planning to wish for revenge on the people who tried to kill me so they could suffer the same way I did, but I can't leave you behind like this. The beast shook his large head. No, Adesewa. Use the wish on yourself. Go back to your people. Even if I turn back into a man, my evil uncle will just try to kill me again. Adesewa smiled, her face shining brighter than the morning sun. It would be selfish of me not to return the kindness you showed me, my prince. You chose to save my life, now let me save yours. She pulled out the stopper. Instantly, the sweet fragrance of rain and fresh lilies filled the air. I wish for the beast to become a man again. Suddenly, a blinding beam of light wrapped around the beast. His thick fur fell away like dry leaves, and his sharp claws turned into soft, human hands. When the bright light cleared, there stood a prince as handsome as a king, dressed in sparkling white robes. Adesewa. Prince Ademola cried out, pulling her into a tight embrace. Thank you so much. I will never forget what you did for me. Come with me to my palace. Adesewa felt a flash of pure joy, but then a cold shudder ran down her spine. She remembered her oath. She felt the heavy alikomi beads sitting around her waist. I can't go with you, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. I made a sacred promise to a mermaid that I would never be with any man, Adesewa explained. If I give my heart to you, the river will destroy me. Then let's go face the water goddess together, Prince Ademola declared. They walked side by side until they reached the riverbank. You have to stay right here, Adesewa said gently. I have to see her by myself. This is my own burden to carry, so let me face it alone. Adesewa stepped into the crashing waves and began singing the spirit song. Flash. Her legs instantly fused together, and her golden tail reappeared. She dived deep, deep into the blue waters. Prince Ademola stood on the shore in total disbelief, watching Adesewa transform into a mermaid and glide away into the river. Under the water, the mermaid's eyes flashed like bolts of lightning. You broke the law, the mermaid roared. You gave your heart to a man of the earth. Adesewa knelt down on the ocean sand. Great Mother, I was just a terrified child when I made that oath. I believed all men were wicked like my father. But this prince showed me genuine kindness. Take back your beads. Take back your magic. Just let me be a mortal woman who can love. The mermaid glanced up toward the surface. She saw Prince Adesewa standing on the shore, looking ready to plunge into the deep waters to rescue Adesewa, even though he didn't even know how to swim. The mermaid let out a long, bubbly sigh. True love is a power far older than my own magic, she whispered softly. She gently touched Adesewa's waist. The golden alikomi beads dissolved into tiny bubbles, and Adesewa's tail transformed back into human legs. Go, daughter of the land. You are free, the mermaid said. But warn your prince, if he ever makes you shed a single tear, the river will remember. Adesewa emerged from the water looking as radiant as a fresh flower. Prince Adesewa took her straight to his palace. When his greedy uncle caught sight of the prince, he shrieked in terror, a ghost. The prince immediately gave the command, and his wicked uncle was dragged away to the dungeons. However, Adesewa still had unfinished business. She traveled back to her father's house. As soon as her father and Adefunk saw her approaching, they ran toward her, hoping to get some money. My dear daughter. Adefunk cried out, rushing to embrace her. I am not your daughter, Adesewa replied coldly. You sold me off like an animal. From now on, you will work your own farm and eat only what your own hands can plant. I only came here to tell you that I'm returning every single penny you collected from Chief Adelik. I am no longer his wife. With that, Adesewa turned around and walked away. Next, she visited Chief Adelik's palace. She was shocked to see his 7 wives acting completely like wild animals. I am returning the bride price you paid, Adesewa told the chief. I am not a wife to be bought and sold. My heart belongs to another. Soon after, the 7 wives went to the village square to confess their terrible crime. As punishment, they were banished to live in the wild forest. As for Chief Adelik, he lived a miserable life. His 18 daughters grew up to be so loud and bossy that he spent the rest of his days covering his ears. Adesewa and her prince lived together in pure bliss. Every year, they returned to the riverbank to toss white flowers into the water, giving thanks to the mermaid. One day while walking back, they even spotted the mysterious old woman in the distance, smiling and waving at them. I hope you really enjoyed this story. The moral lesson here is simple: the hands that sell others like goats will eventually end up grazing with the animals. But the heart that chooses kindness, even in the middle of a dark forest, will always find its way to a throne. The stepmother and father planted greed, and they ended up with nothing. The wives planted hatred, and they turned into beasts, but Adesewa planted kindness and courage, so she harvested a whole kingdom. Thank you so much for watching. Do well to subscribe, like and comment.